Welcome to Mind Fitness Warriors, a docu-series that is journaling and going through the discovery of those who have gone through the deepest valleys of mental health and come up and risen through the other side. And we are learning and experiencing and going through this journey. And we're also seeing how a holistic approach to a fit and healthy mind is achievable no matter what your journey is, no matter what you are going through. And I am so honored as your host, Jennifer Bitner, and founder and owner of My Mind Fitness, to welcome our co-host and our guest today. And this is Christina Tsounis. And I'm so excited to have you, Christina, because I know I have been able to be a part of your journey since you were 18, and watching you go through what you have gone through and where you are today is incredible. And your story is so powerful. And I am so honored that you are here to be able to share that with our audience and be able to allow us a sneak peek into your life. So without further ado, I welcome you, and I would love to just start off by diving right in and bring us on this journey. Tell us where you started from, where your story with mental wellness began. I want that real, raw truth of what you've been through, and then we'll find out. We'll discover a little bit about what you have done to bring yourself back into balance in a holistic way. So, without further ado, the floor is yours, and allow us to come on your journey.
Thanks, Jen. You're the best. Thank you so much for having me. As soon as you mentioned that you were doing this, I was like, I need to jump on that for sure. Well, I guess, I'll dive right into the start of my journey. Basically, ever since I can remember, since I was 6 years old, I guess, are the first memories that I have that I can remember. I've dealt with being sensitive, being emotional, not feeling understood, being very different. I remember being 6 years old and just going up and into malls, and escalators and elevators were traumatizing to me. And I remember just having such freakouts from just such a small age of feeling everything in my environment and feeling so overwhelmed whenever I went into situations with lots of people, and constantly feeling pain and feeling emotion and stuff so much differently than everybody else. And so I got labeled a lot very, very young as being highly sensitive, and she has depression and she's anxious, and I would withdraw myself a lot in school. I remember my mom telling stories and stuff of me just pulling my desk away and just crying and putting my head down on my desk. I was like in grade 1 and just bawling and bawling and bawling, and no one could figure out what was wrong. And so I did go and see a doctor when I was about 6 years old. This had been going on basically since I was born. I'd always just been very highly sensitive. And so when I went to see the doctor, I got diagnosed with a few different things. I had a couple tics. So I got diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. They were just really mild. Like I used to just rub my face and stuff. I now look at it more as they were probably self-soothing mechanisms. And I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And I started medication at 6 years old for all of those things. Yeah. So right away, I didn't really have much of a fighting chance in that regard of this is what's wrong with you, and here's some stuff and good luck kind of thing. I don't blame, I don't have any resentment or anything towards that now, because my parents and everyone did what they thought was best for me. I was a very, very emotional child. I was very hurt all the time. I was just crying constantly. I don't know if anyone can relate to that of their kids. It's just very, very highly sensitive to absolutely everything, to a change in routine, to a change in weather, to a friend saying something to them that the friend, it didn't intentionally mean to say anything mean or anything, but I took everything so personally and so to heart. And that just spiraled me down into feeling so anxious and so depressed all the time. And so I grew up like that and continued to take medication, and I saw a psychiatrist and I saw a therapist. just to talk everything out. And I just continued to grow up kind of different and just trying to navigate how I was always feeling. And then I went to private school, which made the biggest difference to my life. I had a 1 teacher to 8 kid ratio, and the school was where you learn at your own pace. I was really suffering in school. I was like 2-3 years behind education-wise. I was diagnosed with a learning disability. So I got a lot of help in that regard, and that school really allowed me to blossom and to flourish and to be safe and to feel that nothing's wrong with you, that you're okay here. And so I flourished, and I was like the lead in the school play. I won a bunch of awards. I was doing so well. And then my parents divorced, and I got pulled from the school that I was in and got put back into the public system for grade 9. That was all kind of around that time. So just entering high school, which is always a transition for anyone. And hormones are going crazy for anyone at that age. And their divorce was very, very triggersome for me. It really led to a complete unraveling and a complete rock bottom with my mental health. And I took it very personally to heart. I'm the oldest as well of 3. And I know I've read a lot that the oldest gets very affected by that. Not that every kid does it, but I felt very severely affected by that. And being so highly sensitive, it just triggered me. So that was kind of the turning point of, oh God, what do we do now? And I was going into high school, and there's a lot of different outside influences that was going on. And I was still seeing a therapist. I was still seeing a psychiatrist. And then the psychiatrist, when I was entering high school and my parents had split up, decided to put me on antidepressants. I wasn't on antidepressants. I was on anti-anxiety and some medication for the tics and stuff. So they put me on an antidepressant at that time. I hadn't been on one yet. And that I don't know necessarily what happened in that regard, but it was just a couple months later, I just spiraled way out of control. I was doing some stuff that was pretty shady. I was pretty promiscuous in my youth. And I dealt a lot with just going out and partying and not hanging around sometimes with the best crew. And that led down to a lot of chemical imbalance and stuff going on, the hormones going absolutely crazy. And then mixed with the antidepressant, I ended up in a complete episode, and I took my bottle of, I guess I'll go back to that day. So I had a huge fight with my mom, and this was, I was just already in a state. I'd been in it for several weeks. I had different states. There sometimes I couldn't get out of bed for weeks at a time, and it would be 3 weeks of showering would be absolutely impossible. And then there'd be weeks of I'm invincible and I can do anything in the world and spend all this money and go out all the time and not get any sleep. And it was just two completely different extremes. And I was in the extreme of just running around, being crazy, just not grounded at all, not myself. And my mom said she used to be able to see this look in my eyes. It was like crazy eyes, like something had gone off in my head and I just wasn't there anymore. And so I was in one of those states, and I had been drinking with a friend the night before, like it was a Tuesday, and it was in high school, like going in the next day to high school and to school. And I had a fight with my mom. I left the house so pissed off and just absolutely hysterical. I don't know if anyone can relate to that. There's just those moments where you get into a mood or a feeling, and it's just like, it's so unbearable. You just want to scream and throw things, and it's just this anger that comes over you that you just can't control. And so I outlashed, and I took my bottle of Prozac that I had been taking, and I walked to school, and I took the entire bottle and walked into the school. And I had 2 really good friends at the time who met with me at the school and walked me to the guidance counselor's office. And that's when an ambulance was called, and there was this huge commotion at the school. I remember just like people outside of the guidance counselor's office. I was also very paranoid at the time, so that may not have actually been happening, but felt like there was like lines of people just everywhere just watching what was going on. And because there was a police car that came, there's an ambulance that came. And I had every person in the guidance counselor's office checking on me, like, are you okay? Like, can you speak to me? Can you give me sentences? And So I was rushed to Oakville Trafalgar Hospital at the time, and was there I was waiting to get to see a doctor for quite a while. And I remember just getting some charcoal or something for my stomach to coat your stomach. And I had to wait with two police officers. They had to wait with me until I saw the doctor. That's legally, I guess, what's supposed to happen. And my mom wasn't even answering the phone. My grandmother came in. It was just like a nightmare of a situation. And I ended up being admitted for a few weeks it was originally a 72-hour hold, which means that there's not really a choice. And my mom actually had to beg them to keep me. They were going to let me go because I'm very good I get into these emotions like that, and I react immediately. I react a lot of the time in even text messages and stuff like that. So especially when it comes to a state that I'm in, I react in a very aggressive manner. So my mom had to beg them to keep me, because she's like, she does this, she'll snap out of it and she'll be like, no, I'm okay. But she's like, I don't know what to do with her. I need you to keep her. So I ended up staying there for 3 weeks and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And started a bunch of medication, a huge protocol of medication for that. Just being in that environment for 3 weeks with so many people that were just so broken and so far gone was traumatizing in on its own. And so I came out of there diagnosed with that. I had missed quite a bit of school, and so coming out of there and transitioning back into my life, I was also living a life that I knew I had to step away from, and I needed to step more into a healing kind of route. So after that, I just continued to check in with my psychiatrist. I was extremely medicated. It was like sometimes I couldn't get out of bed till like 1 o'clock, and I was feeling mentally a little bit better, but the meds were I was like a freaking zombie, and I was on the heaviest sleeping pill that you could be on. I couldn't sleep. There was no chance that I could fall asleep. So I'd end up going to sleep at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on a school night. And then I was getting up, but like, I just couldn't get out of bed. It was a nightmare. And then I found fitness, which was a big turning point for me right when I got out of high school. I was starting to do a little bit better. I started to get really active. I'd never really been into fitness before. I was really overweight a lot of the time, just from, I feel like, a lot of the meds. I use food as a huge outlet to make myself feel safe, to give me the only thing that I feel like I had control over to make myself feel better. So I ended up finally getting into something that was healthy for me. And I went to school for that. I studied that for a couple years. That's where I met Jen, the lovely Jen. She actually was the general manager when I got hired to just be customer service at the Good Life that's by my house. And she was the general manager at the time, and she always kind of kept tabs on me. And then I transitioned to a personal trainer probably about just under a year after starting. And I loved it. I loved being involved with the body. I loved the idea of health and wellness. And I was really physically and mentally doing really well. I was the stablest I had been. I was still on all the medication, but I was doing just really well. Everyone was just amazed at the progress that I had made. I felt stable for the first time in my entire life. And then I had a couple things that came up in my life that really triggered me. The overwhelm of working like that for the first time was a lot. I realized now how empathetic of a person I am, and the job that I was in was very, very people-oriented and constantly being around different people's energies and stuff. And I now realize that I have to be very mindful of protecting my space and how I feel when I go into public environments. But just the overwhelm of that, the overwhelm of the hours and just not getting enough sleep. And I was in a relationship at the time that was very triggersome. And that relationship did end, and that really triggered me into a downward spiral. And I ended up, I remember there was I think a day that I couldn't come into work. My mom had to come into the gym and like talk to Jen, because I felt I have such a guilt issue, and I felt so badly about what was going on. Jen was like, nope, I totally get it. Whatever she needs. It was, for the first time, I really hadn't experienced someone like, other than like teachers and stuff, that had really understood that in me and like supported that. So that was a huge thing for me too during that period of time. And so I did eventually have to leave the job that I was at, just because mentally I was again started to not be able to get out of bed. The relationship ended and I went through a complete depression. I actually ended up 2 visits to the hospital and emerged because there was one night my mom was holding onto my medication. This was right after I had left the job that I was at and broke up with the boyfriend that I was with. and I'd run into a room and try to grab my pills, and it was all just big cries for help and like just needing attention and needing love and needing someone, anything to acknowledge what I was going through. And it's really interesting how we react, I think, sometimes to needing something. So I ended up 2 hospital visits there. They didn't end up keeping me. I was pretty snapped out of it. I'm like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not going through 3 weeks again here. And I was like, something's got to change, Christina. You cannot continue on like this. And so unfortunately I did continue on like that for another, I think it was like 8 months or something, almost to a year of just down and then up and down and then up and not getting out of bed. It was reminding me a lot of how I lived my life in high school. It was 3 weeks not getting out of bed, and then 3 weeks of running around, driving my car, like God knows in the middle, like whatever hours in the middle of the night. My mom was just like, what the hell are you doing? Like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Where are you going? Like, it's just constant up and downs like that. And I'm just going with my story there. So then basically, I'm going to say just over 2 years ago, I had a big transitionary point. I knew I was feeling a little bit better. Things were definitely shifting for me. I was just constantly seeking answers. I was the entire time, my entire life, 15 years, since I was diagnosed with something at 6, I've been trying to find something to help me. And medication helped a little bit. But there's an answer that I was needing. And I really knew within me that this wasn't supposed to be my life, that there was something else out there, and that I could heal from this, even though that everyone tells you that you're never going to have kids. You're going to be lucky if you live a balanced, stable life and subsidized housing. Let's start looking into that for you. You got to get on all the government support because you're never going to be able to work. Those are all the beliefs that were fed into me my entire life. And so, but I always felt like there was something else, that there is another way to be able to do this. And right when I feel like I was kind of at a rock bottom, but kind of at a turning point, I still say it's rock bottom, but I look at it more now as a turning point. I got a message from Jen, and I'd kind of seen some Facebook stuff going on of her talking about essential oils and how they've been really helping her. And I know Jen and I had connected previously about her journey and everything that she has been through. And she connected so much to me, and it was really nice just to always have someone that kind of had been through it and was on the other side of it. I remember doing a thing with you, like a Panic Away. It was so long ago. She's always been doing stuff just to kind of help people with anxiety and reach people in a different way. So she was telling me all about essential oils and how these little bottles had changed her life and how she's done a complete 360. And so I agreed to sit down with my mom. Actually had been to a class that she was doing. She invited my mom. My mom went and was raving after the conversation she had with Jen, or the class that she had with Jen, and she ordered a kit right away and then was like, Christina, you should really sit down with Jen. And I sat down with Jen, and she just went off and told me about every single bottle and what they all did. And I was just, for some reason, resonated so deeply with it. And I kind of just started dabbling with a couple different essential oils. I didn't really they were pretty, but it wasn't it wasn't the same. And so I got started right away with just like a starter kit that came with like the top 10 oils, one of them being frankincense, which basically completely changed my life. That oil is absolutely amazing. I could go into that for hours. But it was the catalyst to me completely shifting my entire life. Finding these it was something that I had control over. So I remember calling Jen, freaking out one day, so anxious right after I'd gotten my kit, crying. And I was like, I can't do this. I'm so overwhelmed. And she was like, pull out your Serenity, put a drop on the palm of your hand, rub your hands together, put the phone down, and take a few deep breaths. And I did that, and I will never forget what that did. Never. I still do it. I put a drop of Serenity on before this call. It was the most amazing thing. And it was not it took the edge off. I was like, holy crap, I'm in control. No, I'm in control of myself. I can calm myself down. I don't need to externally find something. It was it's right here. And it was just the smell of literally of doTERRA Serenity. And it was instant change. And so as soon as that happened, it was kind of like proven to me. I was like, okay, well, these work. And I just continued on learning about them and learning about the way that plants work with the brain, and that frankincense is Mother Earth's has the same properties that antidepressants have in them. And that if you take frankincense, that it can really alleviate a lot of the symptoms that I was feeling. And I started doing that every day. And I started taking one that was for your stomach. And I knew that I had some stomach upset in the morning. I'd wake up and I had all this pain. And then I started researching more stuff about the gut. And then that led me to a naturopath. And then I started healing my body in different ways. I was continuing to use the oils. I started getting some vitamin C injections and some vitamin B injections. And I realized how deficient my body really was, that it wasn't just that mentally I was so often so roller coastery. It was my body too was just completely broken. I was deficient in so many different things, and then that causes adverse mental health effects. So as soon as I started supplementing my body with essential oils and some naturopathic medicine and homeopathic medicine, I couldn't believe the change in my overall well-being. I also found a lot of movement and a lot of meditation and doing movements slowly. I was always into fitness, but I was always so focused on go, trying to run, and needing to really slow down and learn to open my body and connect to my body. And doing all of those things, it was, I just learned to get to know myself and learned of this is what Christina likes, this is what Christina needs, this is how Christina functions best. And through that, I just started to get to know myself. And I think the more that you get to know yourself, the more that you know why you're here. And I look back on all my sensitivity and all of those things that were wrong with me, and I can appreciate them differently now because I know how to deal with the parts of them that aren't so great. There's good and bad to everything. And I think those qualities in me were really looked at as bad too by society, and I was very misunderstood. And I think if we can continue to try to holistically approach things with people, they might not have to live 15 years of their life like that. And the amount of liver damage that I've had to undo, that I'm still undoing, is insane. Like, it's the levels at which the medication can really, really harm your body for really long periods of time is pretty crazy. I think that pretty much sums it up.
Wow.
Anything else you want to,
I'm like, I actually got a tear there. I'm like, just hearing your story and knowing what you have gone through, it's incredible to know that you were first diagnosed at the age of 6, and a lot of people's stories start at such a young age, because that's when the trauma, like, there's certain things that are just so traumatizing, and we hold on to that, and our subconscious mind will play that story over and over and over again until we release the hold that we have over those beliefs. And you were saying that, people had put these beliefs on you that you were going to need subsidized housing, that you were going to need government assistance throughout your entire life because you would never be able to do this on your own. So where do you see yourself now in comparison to what those beliefs may have been in grade 9 or grade 10, when you had lived already years with understanding things would always be different? How do you view yourself now?
Wow, that's a very good question. I still go through, like, it's not all perfect. Like, I still go through, there's still days that, or I dip a little low. And on those days, there's a difference to myself of, I'm just a lot kinder to myself. The beliefs I have about myself are a lot more from a place of love and understanding. So I've had to dig in myself to pull out all the darkness and look at all those beliefs of, you can't do this, you can't do this. And when you look at those beliefs, you also start to pull out the truth that is really who you are. And that I'm just very sensitive and empathic, and I see people, I understand people. And so when I go through lows and stuff, it's just a different understanding of, this too shall pass. This isn't your life. That this is just probably you being overstimulated, and you just need a minute. You just need some time to rejuvenate, and maybe that's 2 days, and that's okay. That it's okay to be the way that I am, that there's nothing wrong with needing some time, that there's nothing wrong with you not functioning like everybody else, because I'll function differently, and that's okay, and I'll work with that, because that's what I've been given. So I think that's different, is it's not a curse. I'm not a victim anymore. It's just, I just have to work with who I am, and that's more than okay.
I
So I
love
think that's been the biggest thing for me, is just self-acceptance.
And it sounds as though the loving yourself piece is what
Mhm.
has allowed you to move out of the victim mentality.
Yes,
Because you love
100%.
yourself, it's more because you're so accepting. And it's funny because you say, it's a piece of you is thinking, well, maybe I'm not like everyone else, and that's okay. And it's
Mhm.
interestingly enough, most of the people that we're going to hear from, we all have that. Like, we all don't have our stuff together. Every single one of us is going through something. And if it's not mental, it may be physical, but most of it's mental. And I've spent, the last 11 years um, working with individuals, whether it be from the fitness club where I was, a coach and a manager and a mentor there, or in the business that I have now. I have a thriving wellness business now with the essential oil company that I get to work with predominantly women every single day. And regardless if someone has a type of diagnosed mental health, condition or illness or challenge or whatever the case may be, regardless if there's anything diagnosed, most people are struggling with those stories and struggling with things that they have been taught since they were so little. And it's almost every single person for that matter. And I love how you have been able to go so deep into releasing that darkness and coming from that approach of love and kindness, because that is one of the biggest things. And the holistic approach that you spoke about, you started with essential oils, then you went to a naturopath, and you used a lot of the vitamins and minerals that your body was deficient in to get your body back to a state of balance because of years and years of damage through abuse of alcohol or drugs, or even beliefs, thought patterns. Like, that stuff is
100%.
depleting too, right? It can be toxic. It can be very toxic. And and then from there you got into a lot of the movement side of things too, like releasing blocked energy from the body through movement, and the workshops that you worked with. And one of, someone who's been a huge mentor of yours, Rosa at Rise, a lot of the work she did with you as well, like just through working through, just that love space. This It's crazy to think that years and years and years of you being medicated turned to a holistic approach, which came from a totally different angle, has been able to bring you balance that you deserve, but also giving you that acceptance to take that time just to be like, hey, I need a day. Okay. I just need a day. And now you recognize that not as a downfall or something to be critical about, but a self-awareness that gives you permission to be you, and permission to be uniquely and authentically real and loving of your situation, of your experience. But a lot of people who didn't get diagnosed with, anxiety or bipolar or ADHD or whatever, they don't give themselves permission to take a day, and they're still struggling. So I think this is a huge gift. And what if people want to work with you or want to experience more of what you've gone through, or be able to do you offer anything right now through tell us a little bit about the company that you started and a little bit about what you're working on now.
That's awesome. So I actually started about 6-7 months ago. Jen mentioned Rosa of Rise, who I was working under for a little bit, she was teaching me some of the stuff that she had taught me, of slowing down with movement and really learning how to connect to my body again. And so I was just doing some classes out of there and just kind of dipping my toes and becoming more of a coach and stuff, and wanting to actually really help people do what I've been able to do for myself. And so I've been very involved with doTERRA for a while, and just really starting to get the wheels going with that. And so I'm a big advocate and for oils, for getting them into people's homes and getting them on people, just wherever. If you want a drop, I will send you a drop. They're just so magical. So that's been a big part of my business. And then so I just started doing it's called restorative stretching. My website is going up, I think, in the next 2 days. I'm very excited. And so I teach classes that are like mobility stretching classes that work with some fascial stretch techniques to really slow down your mind, to really bring you into your body. And I use some essential oils mixed in those classes. I also have done a couple holistic lifestyle coaching certifications, so some one-on-one coaching done with that. I do a couple other healing modalities that I'm just dabbling into as well. But the stretching and the oils is really where I feel like I'm really going to be able to reach people, and that's where a lot of change I feel like can happen with everyone. So if you're interested in any classes, they're really cool, very relaxed and meditative, and everyone's just been experiencing some crazy shifts with them. So yeah.
Awesome. So what will your website be so we can check it out?
So it will be restorativestretching.com. www.restorativestretching.com.
Awesome. Yeah. And your company name is or they can follow you on Instagram as well at?
Yes, at Holistic Cove.
Holistic Cove. Awesome. And we'll also in the credits have your information there so people can connect with you. And thank you so much, Christina. Your story is so powerful, and it is incredibly hopeful and inspiring just to watch where you came from, and the fact that you shut down what society has placed on you and said, that is not my life. There is more for me out there. And you have taken a hold of that. And over these last few years, you've really just owned that, and you have risen into this beautiful woman who is now trailblazing the path for other people who will, be stepping in and stepping up and owning their lives as well, even if it's day one and they're a beginner, being able to help beginners from that first stage. So thank you for joining us and sharing your story and sharing your journey. And, it's with hope that we're able to affect even one single person from hearing your inspiring words that you shared with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. This is just amazing. This is so important. This is so important.
Yes. People, listen.
Thank you for having me so much. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you for sharing, and stay tuned. We will be releasing more docuseries. We'll be releasing more interviews, and for every single person whose heart is touched, we want to hear. We want to hear how you're doing and how you've been inspired to change your life too. So, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.